December 1944. Winter had fully taken hold of Europe. The Ardennes forest, stretching across Belgium and Luxembourg, was buried under thick layers of snow. Trees stood frozen and heavy, their branches weighed down by ice, while the ground beneath was hard and unforgiving. Every step made a sharp crunch, breaking the silence of a landscape that seemed almost lifeless. But beneath that silence, one of the most desperate operations of World War II was about to begin. The German High Command had prepared a bold and risky plan. Their objective was clear: launch a massive surprise attack through the Ardennes, break through Allied lines, and advance rapidly toward the port of Antwerp. If successful, this move could split the Allied forces in two and disrupt their supply lines, potentially changing the course of the war. But behind this ambitious strategy lay a critical weakness, one that threatened to destroy the entire operation from within. Germany was running out of fuel. By late 1944, Allied bombing campaigns had severely damaged German oil refineries. Fuel production had dropped dramatically, and what little remained was carefully rationed. Panzer divisions, once the pride of the German army, were now struggling to stay operational. Tanks that had once dominated battlefields were becoming liabilities. Without fuel, they were nothing more than lifeless steel machines. Despite this, Adolf Hitler made the decision to proceed. He believed that a sudden and powerful offensive could still turn the tide, or at the very least, buy Germany valuable time. The operation was launched on December 16, 1944. Before dawn, German artillery opened fire across the Allied front. The silence of the forest was shattered instantly. Explosions echoed through the trees, shaking the frozen ground. Moments later, infantry units and armored divisions began moving forward, advancing through the snow-covered terrain. The attack achieved its first goal: surprise. Allied forces were caught off guard. In several sectors, their defensive lines were broken and German units pushed forward rapidly. Columns of tanks and vehicles moved through narrow forest roads, their engines roaring against the cold air. For a brief moment, it seemed like the German plan might actually work. But the deeper they advanced, the more dangerous their situation became. German commanders had been given strict orders: capture Allied fuel depots whenever possible. This was not just a strategic objective, it was a necessity for survival. Many units had been deployed with only enough fuel for the initial push. Beyond that, they were expected to rely on captured supplies. As German forces moved forward, they occasionally came across abandoned Allied supply dumps. Fuel barrels, trucks, and ammunition were found in these locations, left behind in the chaos of retreat. In those moments, it felt like a temporary lifeline. Engines that were on the verge of stopping roared back to life, and the advance continued. But it was never enough. The Ardennes terrain created its own set of challenges. Dense forests, narrow roads, and icy conditions slowed down movement. Vehicles struggled to maintain speed, and traffic congestion became a constant issue. Every delay meant more fuel consumption, and every extra mile increased the risk of running out completely. German supply lines were also stretched thin. Frontline units were moving forward, but getting supplies to them was becoming increasingly difficult. Meanwhile, Allied forces were beginning to recover from the initial shock. Defensive positions were reorganized, and resistance started to strengthen. In some areas, the reality of the situation became painfully clear. Tanks stood abandoned along the roadside, fully intact but completely out of fuel. Trucks loaded with ammunition were left behind, useless without the ability to move. Soldiers were forced to leave behind heavy equipment and continue on foot through the snow, exhausted and under constant pressure. The further the German army advanced, the more fragile their position became. Weather conditions, which had initially worked in their favor by grounding Allied aircraft, could not protect them forever. Time was running out, and with every passing hour, their fuel reserves were shrinking. What had begun as a bold and aggressive offensive was slowly turning into a dangerous gamble, one where every decision carried the risk of total failure. Still, the orders remained unchanged. Advance forward, no matter the cost. By the final days of December 1944, the battlefield in the Ardennes had begun to change. What had started as a powerful and unexpected German advance was now facing growing resistance. The same weather that had once protected the German offensive was beginning to shift, and with it, the balance of the battle. For several days, thick clouds and heavy fog had grounded Allied aircraft, allowing German forces to move without fear from the skies. But as the weather cleared, the situation changed instantly. The sky, once silent, filled with the sound of engines. Allied fighter planes and bombers returned in full force. They targeted German supply lines, moving convoys, and key positions. Snow-covered roads that had once hidden advancing German columns were now fully exposed. Every vehicle in motion became a visible target. German soldiers quickly realized they were no longer safe. Whenever the sound of aircraft echoed through the sky, drivers abandoned their vehicles and soldiers rushed for cover. But in the open terrain, there was often nowhere to hide. Bombs fell with devastating accuracy, tearing apart convoys and igniting fuel trucks into massive explosions. Flames rose against the white snow, creating a stark and deadly contrast. This was more than just destruction. It was the breaking point of the German supply system. Fuel, already scarce, was now being lost faster than it could ever be replaced.